Welcome all. Let's start then by, um, maybe before we go into intros and introduce ourselves, we can give it a context about how this came about. I wonder if Sarah, do you want to, given that you and I have instigated this, would you be happy to give a quick 1 minute framing of how we got here?
Yeah, do you
the
want to
purpose of the session?
put the slides up for that, Max?
Yeah, go on then.
So just to introduce myself, my name's Sarah Selesnyov. I'm the head teacher of School 360, which is part of the Big Education Trust in London. And this session arose as part of a partnership project between us and the Visionaries. Max will talk a little bit about who the Visionaries are, but they're a charity based in our building. We're a brand new school, so we have lots of space in our building, and we let those rooms out to charities and social enterprises whose vision and mission aligns with ours. Have you got the slides, Max?
I do, yeah. I'm just trying to get it up.
Yeah, so we formed a partnership called the Visionaries Eco Project. Just to give you a little bit of information about School 360, our mission statement is learn together, think differently, change the world. So we're a school that has social justice at its heart, and that is enacted through what we call a head, heart and hand curriculum. So a balance of head, which is academics, with heart, which is relationships and well-being, and with hand, which is creativity and skills building. And being a school that's committed to social justice, we're obviously very keen on helping our children and families and the community to understand and know about the climate crisis and to take action to tackle it as well. Max, can you go on to the next slide?
See if I can work it. There we go.
So a little bit about what we've done so far. So we're very committed to play is one of the underpinning principles of the school. And because of that, outdoor learning is very, very important to us. We have a rooftop garden that we've developed where the children can grow and pick their own food, which can go into the kitchens, or it can be donated to tenants in the building. We also have a food bank that is run weekly by the local vicar. He gives out produce from the garden there. We run a mixed indoor-outdoor provision for all of our children. The eldest of them are now 7, so they're able to go indoor and outdoor as they wish during lesson time. And we have lots of little areas in the school which have been designed to accommodate that. And we also run an annual, we have chickens, which you can see in the picture. And we have an annual family camping trip, again, run in partnership with the Visionaries, where we take not just the children in reception, but also their mums and dads out to a field, and we run an overnight camp with them, a communal camp, to get them to engage with nature. And the next slide, Max, please. Our latest plan is we are a small urban school with a very small footprint. We have a rooftop play area on the school where the garden is, but we have at the base of our school, we have a very small playground area, and it is almost full of concrete. And it hasn't been very productive for us in terms of supporting the children to play effectively during their break times. So we want to create something that's better for their play, which will involve a natural play space with a fallen tree, with some trees for shade. We have very little shade in the playground, but also trees that grow fruits, fruit bushes that will provide homes for birds and insects, wildflowers and grasses that children can play in, but that can be also used as habitats for plants and animals. And then also some raised beds that can be used to grow food and so on and so forth, but so that this space can be opened on the weekends and made accessible to parents and residents in the local community. And we're fundraising at the moment to make that happen. So we're halfway there in terms of raising enough money to dig up the playground.
Thanks, Sarah. And yeah, so just from the Visionaries perspective, we'll break out and give you a chance to chat to each other in a moment. But yeah, just I guess a bit more context on obviously what we're doing at School 360, and with School 360 is one example of many of attempts to bring our education models more into alignment with the living systems that we are part of and that we depend on for life. So how can education be a vehicle for deeper nature connection and deeper relationships between communities, between children and the land and where their food comes from and all of the living systems that we're part of. So for us, this space and this journey that we're on is really about opening up, yeah, I guess learning out in the open, learning with other educators that are also trying to do the same, learning together and collaborating, because ultimately, you know, School 360 Big Education is just a few schools, and we're global education systems. I know there's people tuning in from multiple countries here, so yeah, at the Visionaries, and particularly this Visionaries Schools Lab is about learning and experimenting together and collaborating. So with that in mind, I'm going to invite us to just go into smaller breakout rooms. Let them tune in before I give the instructions. Set out the breakout rooms. So I'm going to give them breakout rooms of 2 to 3 per breakout room, and we'll just have 5 minutes or so just to go around and just to share, you know, what's brought you to this space, and what is it you're working on, what is it you're looking to learn or connect with others around, and we'll come back into. I'll call you back in about 5 minutes. So, yeah, when you're there we go. If there's someone who's just joined in your room, let them bring them up to speed. Welcome back. Welcome, Kathy.
Hi there.
Hi there. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no, sorry, my computer crashed with the Zoom update, which was not very helpful.
It's all good. Happens. We're just all coming back in from breakout rooms, so give us a moment to return. All right, welcome back, everyone. Yeah, that's a good one, isn't it? Great. Hopefully that's nice to get to know a few people in the room. We did create the spreadsheet as a collaborative space where we can keep adding these things. So if you're happy to share what you're working on and what are your live questions and inquiries and your contact details, then hopefully that can be a space where we can also connect with others here that we might, like anything, these hour-long sessions are a bit of an opening rather than a full cycle. So the plan for the rest of the time we've got together is to offer a few different, I guess, offer a bit more context on what we've been working on at School 360 and the Visionaries and some of the opportunities and challenges that we've been facing, and then to hear a few provocations from different perspectives on this question of like how are we rewilding education? How are we ensuring children and young people and their families maintain their connection to nature and living sustainably, regeneratively, whatever language you like to use. We've got Alexandra, who's a parent from School 360. We've got Patrick here, who's going to give us a kind of Newham Council perspective on things, and Julian, who is again a local partner to ours, runs an organisation that does a lot of this work with families and communities. So we'll hear from each of those, and then have some open space where we can all just throw our different inquiries and questions into the chat and answer them collectively. It's a bit of an open space, really. And yeah, so I guess just from a bit of framing, I was at a conference last week and I was running a session about how to make business and organizations more nature-led. But one of the questions was, okay, well, what does that actually look like? And then if we're clear on what that looks like, then how do we get there? And I think a similar question stands for education. Like, what does a nature-connected, thriving educational ecosystem actually look like? And then ultimately, how do we get there, given all of the pressures and constraints and challenges that exist within the funding landscape? So I think these are questions that we're not going to necessarily answer today, but hopefully have some threads into some liberating paths forward. So is there anything else you'd like to say about the work at School 360, what we've been working on, what the journey's involved?
No, I think that will probably come through in what Alex and Patrick will raise, which connects very closely to our work here at School 360.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. Okay. Well, then, in which case, Patrick, I wonder if you'd be happy to kick us off.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know on paper it says I'm here to give the Newham Council perspective, but it's an organisation with thousands of people working for it, and I can give my perspective as someone who works with Newham Council, but I work with other councils as well, so I'm not a kind of official card-carrying employee. So don't take things I say as kind of gospel Newham Council policy or anything like that. But I want to zoom out for a second and just say a little bit about what's my kind of guiding question or guiding vision is for the work I do, and how this links to this question of rewilding education. So I'm really passionate about basically transforming the food system. I think the way we grow food at the moment drives a lot of global problems, climate related to climate, ecosystem destruction, and all sorts of health problems. And then at the same time, we are capable and have this other option available to us, which is a much kind of more local, more regenerative way of growing food, which is more connected to nature and to natural cycles. And I just think that this is one of the, in a way, that like the most important transformations that I hope to see over the rest of our lifetimes. So I have been really interested in that, and specifically, how can we grow more food in cities? So I think the amount of food we can actually grow in cities is really underestimated. There was a study from Sheffield University that came out a year or two ago, where they suggested that if just 10% of the urban green space went to food growing, then it could provide the 5 a day, so 5 portions of fruit and veg for 15% of people. So if you took that to the extreme, we could technically grow all of the fruit and veg that cities need from within cities. That's obviously, that would leave no space for any other green space. So I'm not suggesting that, but just the fact that 10% could make such a huge dent in our consumption of fruit and veg, I think is really interesting. Or another one is if we raise chickens in a space the size of 1 parking space, you could comfortably get over 1,000 eggs per year. And there are 10 in London. There are 10 Hyde Parks worth of off-street parking, of on-street parking. Sorry. So when we're thinking about how we could use some space differently, and how we could grow food differently, and that there's just a lot of potential, and I think that in general is kind of underestimated. So with my work with Newham Council, the food strategy team basically said to me, do anything that will lead to more food growing in Newham. And I think the reason that they said this is because there's a growing recognition with councils that food growing has a huge amount of social value. It brings people together. It's not, as some ideas of it, it's just back-breaking labor, or it's just a chore and something to be avoided as much as possible. But then at the same time, there are such steps forward in terms of education, the calming impact of being in green space, the fact that gardening and time in nature is even being prescribed by doctors for solutions to lifestyle diseases and to things like depression. There's just a growing recognition more widely that food growing is something that can help soothe and be a solution to so many of the social problems we're facing as well. And it's really interesting to see how different schools are also starting to integrate this. I've worked with probably 30 or so, maybe 40 schools in Newham in the last couple of years. And there are lots of challenges around food growing. There's things like the amount of maintenance it takes, and the fact that there's not always a staff member who can take it all on their own. But there's also, again, that growing recognition of the wider value that food growing can provide for schools. The way it can perhaps students that maybe struggle a bit in the traditional formal education setting or maybe have behavioral issues or issues at home with traumatic experiences that make the regular school experience difficult. We hear time and time again from teachers that they can be transformed, or their behavior can be transformed. They can be calm, more connected, and more present when they're in green spaces or when they're doing different tasks with their hands and connecting to the natural world. So at the moment, one of my focuses is to just figure out how to support schools to grow, or to grow food in that way that recognizes the social benefits. And that's what brought me in contact with Sarah and Max, and that's one of my focuses at the moment. So I'll leave it there for now, I think.
Well, you stirred so many thoughts, Patrick. Thank you. And you're right. I think that last question, that piece about, it's not just about the food growing, but actually the way in which it's grown and our relationship to that is fundamental as well. Thank you.
Can I just, you reminded me, Max, of something. So there's a really famous study, which from about 20 years ago, which looked at 2 housing estates in Chicago, and they were the exact same kind of housing estates. They were for social housing, so they were the same demographics and income levels that lived in both of these places, and they had green space. They were built at the same time, so the same design. One of them chose to get rid of their green space and concrete over it because of the maintenance, and the other one kept it. And this provided an example of, because so many of the elements were controlled, it provided an example of what the impact of green space can be on communities who were in probably the bottom 10% income-wise in the United States. And they saw astonishing differences in so many of the life outcomes, even though these should be the same. It should be the same. So it's one of the most famous studies on what the actual impact of green space can be on people's life outcomes. And the reason that they believe there was such a big difference, because obviously they studied this more and more, is they found out that people in the green space had more social connections because they stopped under the tree more. Under the trees, they sat down on the benches overlooking the trees. They got to know their neighbors. They knew more people in their building compared to the one without green space. So that meant, for example, they had access to childcare if they needed to go to a job interview. They had that network of support. So yeah, I really think thinking about this in the wider sense of what this can offer us as communities and in terms of becoming more resilient is a really key part of the picture. And yeah, I'll share that. I'll put that study in the chat right now.
Yeah, perfect. That's a really, I'm really glad you brought that. Thank you. Okay, I mean, we can dive straight into that. But we're gonna hear from Alex and Julian, and then we'll open up the space for an open discussion. Alex, you happy to go next?
Yeah. Okay. Hi, I'm Alex. I'm one of the parents in School 360. I'm also a nature conservationist, and I also research now human rights. So I think I'm in both worlds, which for me are not separated, but we still see them very separate in nature and people. So, and following up on Patrick's and Max's point of relationship, I think relationship in general is my driver and my focus on being involved in School 360, because I think bringing back more nature in the playground, I think it's a huge opportunity to not only reconnect with nature, but also understand each other better and also think outside of our species. So I think we have these expectations of children or adults, to care for nature, or to care for each other. But if they don't have the practice of doing that, I think it's very difficult and with dire consequences, as we see. And I think because I'm in contact with Max, with Sarah, with Andy, the other co-head teacher, and I realized that the challenges, the school and the families almost have the same challenges in our daily lives, from financial, systemic, communication. But I also think that all of these can be transformed in opportunities. For example, we know that schools struggle financially, for example, and their human resources can be impacted. They don't have enough teachers or people around. But I think it's a good opportunity to make community organizing stronger around the families, and build this community. I know it's hard. I know everybody's struggling with their time, with their finances. But on the other hand, if we are keep saying the word social justice without, you know, enacting this justice through participation, I think it's a very missed opportunity. And I'm definitely want to support the school, you know, as much as we can. But I've noticed with parents, sometimes they have this habit of criticizing, you know, the system, criticizing the school without having not necessarily the opportunity, because School 360 is really brilliant in creating this open environment. But I think at a personal level, they don't have the exercise of building, you know, of constructing something in place, which I think from my side, I mean, I would love to work more with School 360, for example, to have a better community organizing around families, you know, because I think they are doing the best for the children, but of course for time restraints. And I think maybe, you know, with this rewilding, with the rewilding of the playground, maybe it's a huge opportunity to create these alliances, you know, between school and parents, and kind of for some of the parents who are willing to carry on the message or convince people, or because I'm very aware that we all need to keep learning, but you know, and not to be patronizing to educate to adults, or but the reality is that we all need to be re-educated at some point, you know, in this thing. So yeah, I think this is my view, because Max asked me to have a critical view. So okay, so if you have questions, please let me know. So I'll be happy to chat with you.
Thank you, Alex. Yeah, it's an important perspective. Julian, over to you.
Hi, hi everybody, and again, thanks Max and team for inviting me along today. I just should stress that I'm not an educator, but I'll tell you a bit about Natural Neighbours and how it does very much overlap with schools and with everything that's going on here, and actually really builds on what those who've gone before me have said. So Natural Neighbours, our vision is urban environments that reach their full potential to host wildlife, really importantly, urban, and importantly, for the reasons of improving, maintaining human health and well-being, as much as planetary biodiversity and climate reasons. And apologies to the two who were in the group with me earlier on, I'm repeating myself. So we see that as three sides of the same coin, if you see what I mean. And the route to achieving that vision, well, wildlife everywhere, of course, is under pressure, and everywhere needs more and better habitat, and has lost so much of habitat that it needs to survive. And of course, it as an abstraction is precious, much beloved, cherished species that are important for our health and the world at large. What wildlife also needs is better connected habitat. Turning to the urban part of this, which of course is where most of us now live around the world. Most of us now live in cities. Increasingly, we will live in cities, and in a country like the UK, where I'm talking from here, the majority of us live in cities by quite a margin. And yet cities are particularly empty of nature, of life-sustaining, human health-sustaining nature, as we've heard before, or promoting, health promoting. And that's an issue, not just for our health, but also because it's an opportunity cost, because particularly the case in the UK, which is one of the most nature deprived countries in the world, the countryside is essentially green desert. There are obviously pockets of woodland and forest and so on, but it is highly impacted, and a lot of the fields that you would run through in the countryside have actually less nature than you would have walking around a city park. What we're particularly focused on is creating connectivity, and this really picks up what Alex was just saying, within and between communities, because how do we get over the fact that habitat is so fractured, and we need to connect habitat? Well, we in cities where land ownership and management is so fragmented, well, the answer is our answer is to create social networks of nature nurturers. I'm not saying wildlife gardeners, because many of us don't have a garden. So nature nurturers who can connect, collaborate together to create ecological networks of joined up habitat in whatever outdoor space you've got, whether that's on a balcony or a roof terrace or in a communal garden or your own garden and so on. And the overlap with schools is because schools are hubs in their community. They're a really important central leading institution in communities, not just whilst you're at school or have or have children at school, but have an impact thereafter. And so this point about involving communities, well, our model is we invite the wider community to come in and help with the school on the school site in doing things like building ponds and planters and such like, and in the process not just improve the school site. And so we're also looking at community estate gardens and hospitals and so on, but here we're talking about schools, but also gain inspiration, gain understanding why this is important, gain confidence. I can do this. All right, so I don't have the space to build a big pond, but we're making little container ponds as well, or we're putting up bird boxes or certain planting that will support particular poster child species that we've worked with academics to select species that resonate with people, that are charismatic, and also that you feel you can help, and that taken together represent the habitat needs of that wider vision that we have of the city. So reaching its full potential to host wildlife. Yeah, so we're partnering with local schools here. We're introduced to the amazing team at 360 and look forward to, well, certainly more conversations like this and perhaps working more directly with you too. The last thing to say is that we're using a mix of traditional community organising and what we feel is a bit more cutting edge. We've developed an app that enables us to connect through the electronic space, digital space, and that gives you advice what's missing in your area, given what other people are doing around you, so that you can most efficiently and effectively work as a community and as a network. There's more I would say, but I've gone on long enough, so yeah, I'll stop there. But I hope that's interesting.
Thank you, Julian. And yeah, please do share the links. I know you've added to the spreadsheet as well, but please keep add it into the chat as well. Great. So we've got about 15 minutes left. I'd love to, if people are happy to throw questions into the chat, and we'll facilitate a bit of an open discussion now. I think one final gift I wanted to offer into the space was this quote that I've just put into the chat from Robin Wall-Kimmerer, who some of you will know is an amazing plant biologist and author and environmental activist, and also First Nations member of the Potawatomi Nation in North America. And I think this reminder from cultures that have lived in healthy relationship with the land for many thousands of years, of when we give when we take from, it's about how we take from nature, that we should give a gift in reciprocity for what we've taken. Sustain the ones who sustain you, and the earth will last forever. And it's such a simple idea and kind of so obvious. It's kind of like, it kind of feels irrefutable, but then we look at the systems that we've created and they stray so far from that. I think it's an interesting question about how we've arrived at such a extractive way of living, and we could talk about that at length, which
Max, can I add? I mean, because I love this author, and maybe Sarah, maybe we can make it compulsory for parents to read the Braiding Sweetgrass. Maybe it will be.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, yeah, compulsory book club of Robin Wall-Kimmerer.
So Max, I see you posted a question to kind of trigger a discussion, which might be good to kick us off, and it's certainly something I would like to respond to. So Max posted a question about how can schools be a vehicle for local regenerative community-driven food systems, and is this even a task they should take on amongst everything else? And I just want to point out for people who don't work in schools the situation that schools are in right now, which make this really, really challenging for schools. So our budgets are very, very low at the moment. A lot of schools are making teaching assistants redundant and other non-teaching roles. And that means that the responsibilities that those non-teaching staff would have fall to teachers, which makes their workload even higher, and they're working in very stressful environments. And then from a leadership point of view, we are very tightly held to account, if not straitjacketed, by the Department for Education's curriculum and the Ofsted expectations of what we are supposed to do. And we all live in fear of Ofsted. And we know that when Ofsted come in, we could have the most amazing food growing project, which offers a great deal of benefits to the children and the staff and the community. But that would not be included in any kind of Ofsted inspection that we would receive. It would probably not be mentioned in the report unless we could prove that it had a connection to a subject area within the national curriculum. So it's very, very difficult to encourage people to take moves like this and to focus on things like this when those are not the things they're going to be measured and judged on, and it's not the things they have any funding for. So I think those are, just for those of you who don't work in schools, those are some of the challenges that schools face in the UK in terms of taking on this agenda and making it happen. Julian, I see you've got your hand up to respond as well. Oh, Julian's gone. I think he accidentally cut. Oh, there he is. Julian, you there? Yes.
Sorry, it just crashed and then reopened. Don't know what. Why?
Were you wanting to respond to that, Julian?
Yeah, sort of. Well, I guess you finished when I crashed. So yeah, no, thank you. And well, as someone who's not involved in schools, I want to reflect that I completely appreciate that. Obviously, I don't have the depth of direct understanding of it than you do, but yeah, I really appreciate that it's a massive challenge. And those of us on the outside need to manage our expectations accordingly. I suppose my response to it was what I've just said, completely to acknowledge it, B, to say, and this is really a rich vein of conversation to explore, because C, certainly from where we're coming from, but also from the other conversations I've had here, I think have a lot in common with this as well. What we want to do is to create a resource that costs you nothing really, ideally in budget, and is a net gain. Now, obviously, working with any partner, you're going to need to sort of resource that relationship, but ideally it gives more than it takes, and do that in a way that, so let's go through the things that connects your response to Max's question. So schools promoting food growing. Well, what we really want is for that wider community to be taking on more food growing in a way that might actually involve supporting the school as well. So having great conversations with Learning Through Landscapes, you might have heard of, and our contact there has been to Paris to look at what's going on there, because Paris, they have much more of a culture of the school being open and the community coming in and actually helping to manage food beds and that kind of thing. And the school that we're working with here at the moment in our pilot, we've got this fantastic opportunity to really grow the resources in terms of use of the outdoor space and planting beds and so on. But we'll need to work out how do we keep that looked after in the summer, for example, when the staff aren't around. That's a long period. So I think part of the answer is, and this again connects to Alice's and other people's points here, is actually us on the outside helping to involve and inspire the wider community to help with the school in a way that benefits the school and the wider community. But I just wanted to note, also really hearing what you're saying, it's difficult. But
and going back, that relates very closely to the nature of our project. Without the support of the Visionaries, it would have been impossible for us to get as far with this project as we have, because of the capacity and budget and accountability issues. So having external partners, having people like Alex and Dan, who's on this call, and other parents involved in that has been crucial to enabling us to make it happen. It would not have been possible without them. And that does go back to what Alex said about community organising and motivating people to want to get involved in projects like this and to see that they're going to get some benefit out of it ultimately when we can get to the point where we can open the school gates on evenings and weekends and people can come in and grow their own produce. Lorna, you've got your hand up.
Hi, so sorry there's no picture, but I can't work out on my IT how the video doesn't want to work, but that's probably a good thing because I'm not dressed for a Zoom call. So my name's Lorna Davis. For those who I've spoken to already, apologies for the recap. So we work on creating a product which is a planter that goes into schools to take the roof water and reduce the flood risk in the school environment. And I just wanted to sort of say, I joined this today because I'm really interested in seeing what the movement is doing towards encouraging schools to become more green and environment in schools. And as much as anything, just to say to you guys, so the Department for Education, it is a beast and it's incredibly slow moving in terms of mindset change. I personally have a lot of different experiences from a lot of different school environments, and I'm always fascinated to see how different school systems, Steiner schools, things like that work, which potentially is an easier environment to be encouraging green into. But one of the things that the Department for Education has been doing recently, and this is work that we've been involved in, is putting in these we put in these planters which are green space for the children, and it's something which it's the water companies and the Department for Education working together to invest in a flood risk solution which is also providing urban greening, and it's a really positive thing to see going on. One of the biggest challenges that we frequently see within the schools is lack of funding, as you've mentioned. And actually, it's the lack of support from the parents as well as the teachers to then maintain this. And the maintenance is key with all of these environments that you're looking to create, is actually the longevity of people loving them, is that they look loved. And quite frequently, we see it. The lack of knowledge is one thing, but actually the lack of love is what really saddens me when I see green spaces going in, and then they're not being maintained to give them the sort of the worth that they could deliver. So I think, how do we encourage, and natural neighbours, talking to yourself, Julian, earlier, is a really interesting thing. I'm working with the Prince's Trust and the Duke of Edinburgh, all of those organisations, to see how we can set up a post-installation maintenance programme that brings people on board to tie into something else that they have to be doing. So Duke of Edinburgh, you have to be doing something towards environment and community. So getting them involved in this enables us to have the security of maintenance post-installation, but it also gives the kids a chance to be able to earn rewards which are not monetized for their efforts. So I think it's one of the challenges I see with any of this is maintenance needs to be built into, and ownership, and encouraging people to take ownership, because the changing positions of people in schools and stuff, and parents moving on to a different school, doesn't necessarily always encourage that. So that's my thoughts. And just to say, it is, the Department for Education are doing some good work in there. I'm not here to publicise them, or I'm not a parent myself even. This is my business who's been doing this work, and it's something which I'm glad to see. I'm glad to see the Department of Education are funding some of this work. And if you've got a school that might be at an area of flood risk, approach your local water company. It may well be that, for instance, Southern Water have been doing a lot of work on this, and if you're in the Southern Water region and your school is going to help them to be able to address flood risk or combined sewer overflow spills, which of course everybody will see at the minute is massively in the press, you may well be eligible to receiving planters, which then enables you to be able to have that catalyst for green space change, which helps all of us move on and move forward.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Lorna. And just to respond to that, and also to Patrick's question in the chat. So in response to the fear of Ofsted not acknowledging food growing projects, how can we prove food growing contributes to the national curriculum? I think the issue with this is about the slant. So within the national curriculum, there is material about how plants grow and survive and thrive, and how important habitats are. But there is no professional development for teachers in terms of running a garden. And that is my own kind of concern in terms of our project moving forward, is how do I skill up my teachers so that they know what to do and when throughout the year with the gardening project, so that they know how to help the children to do that. It's a whole nother set of professional development on top of all the other things that they need to learn as primary practitioners in particular, because they need to learn about how to teach all the different subject areas of the national curriculum. But then if what we don't want is to get in that situation that Lorna describes, where the growing spaces become neglected and don't get used by teachers. Ian, you've got your hand up at this point.
Yeah, I was just going to kind of say something about that, responded to Patrick as well, around getting over the fear of Ofsted. I support about 600 schools, or my organisation supports about 600 schools doing school leadership support and project work for schools. And I'm also a trustee of a trust. So we do see sometimes, especially where you have scale projects taking place, that is impacting on things like pupil behaviour or pupil engagement or even community engagement, being referenced as a positive impact on schools, where schools have taken the brave choice of not fearing Ofsted and broadening their curriculum and their offer. But it does need a brave school, and it does need, unfortunately, I will say this, I believe schools that probably have lower levels of deprivation because of the pressures that puts on schools to be able to kind of champion the causes. So getting schools together that can champion the type of cause and the type of projects you're talking about, I think is essential to changing the view of fearing Ofsted around broadening your curriculum offer and extending it into a wider community. Thanks.
Thank you. Wow, I mean, it was, yeah, it's so great to hear these different perspectives, and even in the chat, you know, how to map what isn't currently an agenda of what schools are being measured on to what they are being measured on is big opportunities there, and to show that actually there's efficiencies that can be had, and all, you know, even the examples that have been given is, you know, we can show that we can achieve all that is being asked for by current assessment metrics through more holistic different approaches. And yes, I guess I'm very interested in exploring that further with others if we've got time. We've got 2 minutes left, and I'm aware we'll probably have very busy lives to carry on going to.
Is it worth asking people what they might like next, Max, and maybe posting that in the chat if people would like more of this kind of session? What might they like?
Yeah, and you know, we're on a somewhat organic journey of evolving this space to collaborate between educators and between interested parties about how we can learn and lean into these systemic challenges that we've all got slightly different perspectives on it, but ultimately we're here for a shared overlapping mission. So really interested to hear what is helpful, you know, what's really being asked for. And then we've got interest in curating more spaces like this, both as the Visionaries and School 360 in our Visionary Schools lab. So we'll be offering more spaces, but yeah, it's always nice to hear what others need and want. And just before I hand over to you, Julian, I just want to say, because I know some people will have to duck out, so please don't feel rude if you do have to just log out and say thank you and goodbye. But yeah, Julian, over to you.
Hi, well, I was just mindful of running out of time, and I need to leap on in a second as well. But just remembering that in the spreadsheet that you shared with us and asked us to fill out, there is a space for what do you want to learn out of this, you know, from each other. And I wondered if maybe what you could do is, if everyone populates that column, puts in what they would like to discuss further, and then perhaps you can draw out from that, you know, maybe ask people to sort of rate, you know, do a sort of stick a dot on the one you like or something. I don't know, just a suggestion, because you've already in a way started the process of asking and answering that question, what we'd like to talk about. But thank you, it's been great. Lovely to meet everyone.
And Max, can I quickly make a suggestion? Or
please do, yeah.
Yeah, or maybe, I don't know, maybe next time organize like a follow-up, like hybrid in person and online, but also like open it to all the parents and listen to these debates or take part to either in person or online. You know, it's like, I think it's a huge learning, educating opportunity for everyone, you know, like for example, to listen to Patrick, to Julian, to Rachel. So it's, yeah, I think it will be, and sorry, and everybody else in the room. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, a helpful reminder. Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining. Yeah, we'll follow up. If you've got energy to add to the spreadsheet, please do, and that will inform our next steps.
Great. Thank you so much, Max. Lovely to meet everybody.
Nice to meet you
Thank
all.
you so much.
Here from the
Thank you, everyone.